Welcome to the Bowel Chronicles, where we dive deep into the world of bowel health. I'm your host, Nikki Kilpatrick, and on this podcast we have raw and candid conversations with individuals facing various bowel conditions and illnesses. Through personal stories and shared experiences, we illuminate resilience and courage in the face of adversity. Be reminded that each story is personal and unique. These conversations are not to be taken as medical advice or to replace guidance from a doctor or healthcare provider. Our aim is to inspire and empower through these amazing stories, amplifying voices often unheard. So join us as we embark on this journey together. Sit back, listen, and be inspired. Enjoy the episode. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Bowel Chronicles. I'm your host, Nikki Kilpatrick, and today we're joined by Laura in Weymouth Bay in Scotland. Laura, it's very good to have you here with us, share some of your story today.
Good afternoon. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Laura, we were just chatting briefly there and the hairs on my arms are already standing. I am so looking forward to hearing your remarkable story. Why don't you start by telling us how you came to be diagnosed with stage 4 bladder cancer?
Yeah.
And also what age you were, because bladder cancer just doesn't happen to the average young female.
Yeah, thanks. So back in 2017, I was 40 years of age, and I'd had a history of urinary tract infections from a very young age, and they came and went. So obviously, blood in the urine was something that I was familiar with. But one day it just seemed, I was really concerned about it, and there was so much pain. So it was over a weekend, went to the doctors on the Monday morning. And it transpired I was actually passing feces in my urine, and this was due to a fistula caused by the cancer. So basically everything in the bowel and the bladder were moving between each other and not always coming out where they should. So I went through various diagnostic steps with scans, MRI, CT scan, PET scan, and they looked at lots of options. So eventually, after about a month and a half, I got told that I did indeed have bladder cancer. They had to do some further investigation to see the exact stage and what course of action. I was told the best case scenario it would maybe be some treatment and then some surgery, or worst case, I was going to the Glasgow Royal, which is one of the main hospitals in Glasgow, to see some of the top colorectal surgeons in the country. That was the case, and the reason that was the case was the surgery I needed to have was a total pelvic exenteration, which involves removing the bladder, part of the bowel, and all your reproductive and pelvic organs. So that's led by a colorectal team, although a urologist was obviously involved as well. So sort of went from end of August and then 1st of November, I had that life-changing surgery. And the reason it was necessary was because the cancer had spread outside the bladder into the other pelvic areas, and by its definition, with bladder cancer, that's a stage 4 diagnosis.
Wow. What was going on in your head? You go from just having a normal UTI and having blood in your urine to all of a sudden a lot more urine, pain, the discomfort, and these symptoms and scans flag up then that there's something not right. As a 40-year-old female, what was going on in your head?
Yeah, pretty much in disbelief at first. I didn't really know how I was going to deal with it, because I wasn't expecting. I knew there was something a wee bit more wrong, but I had no idea. I had been consciously trying to lose weight during that year with quite a change to diet and fitness. Clearly looking back, I was actually losing more weight than I should have, so it could have been a sign, but by this point I was pretty ill. I'm a sort of project manager was my original work role, and I kind of just treated it like a project, trying to put things into boxes and going, right, what do I need the answer to make the next decision? So I try and dealt with it like that. I think I probably put the emotions to the back of my mind and kept on it that way. And I think it was only after the operation I really fully really learned how to deal with it emotionally, really. I think it was just all about getting to where I needed to be, because I needed to have a second PET scan 2 days before my operation to confirm if it could go ahead or not. And if it had spread further to any other organs or the lymph nodes, etc., that was visible at the time, the operation wouldn't go ahead, and there was palliative care option for a few weeks. That was really the situation we found ourselves in. So I literally knew the day before whether I was having the opportunity for this operation to save my life.
Wow. So you were very, very ill,
Yeah.
extremely ill with two.
Yeah, I'm a sort of size 18 in clothes. I was down to 7 stone. Size 8 clothes were falling off me. I was in a really, really bad position.
With 2 weeks
Yeah.
life expectancy. Like you
Yeah, the operation actually brought forward for a week for that reason. So they had a date and then they said, well, we're actually going to have to bring the operation forward by a week.
did you fully understand what the surgery was that they were?
I would say yes in terms of like I was going to have two stomas and what was the main organs to be removed, but there could have been improvements in the care. The first information I got was actually a leaflet for males, and they said it's kind of the similar but the female version, and I was like, well, that's not really good enough. So I think there could be improvements in the information, which I've shared through the proper routes to get that addressed. But so I think yes, I think from a sex life point of view, I don't think I fully understand it. I was told, I went back to notes and there was kind of like things you could maybe do, but my vagina was shortened significantly, and therefore like intercourse is not possible now. And I don't think I fully had got that, but I guess in all these meetings, I was wondering, can I get to an operation to save my life? So it wasn't top of the list, but I think equally there should be more support afterwards for that. And I know that's again some of the areas that some of the charities are trying to address now for people, because there is a life afterwards, and you need to be able to know what that looks like. So I think that and the emotional side of it, probably I didn't really start to process until after the surgery.
There's so much to unpick there.
Mm,
Like this wasn't a case of you're going to wake up and have two stomas. You're going to have two stomas, two additional things, but you're actually having so many organs,
yeah,
um, vital organs taken away from you, which as a
yeah,
female going through that is very, very traumatic.
yeah,
You know, a lot of people say whenever they have a hysterectomy and such, they feel like less of a woman, and
yeah,
everything's been tampered with, removed. Your hormones are all over the place. There's a lack of
yeah.
hormones.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I went through the surgical menopause after the operation, obviously. So again, a lot of the motions afterwards, you didn't really know which part of it was, and sometimes you would look and you were like, get yourself together, but then you're like, no, actually, I'm dealing with a lot, and you really didn't know which part was causing which kind of
yeah,
emotion. But yeah, it was a tough emotional recovery for sure, even tougher than the physical one.
yeah. So for our audience, listeners and viewers today, our watchers, we are talking about two stomas that Laura
Mhm.
has here. One is a urostomy, where the bladder is basically removed and is brought out through a little opening on the skin. It's created a stoma. You also then have a colostomy, which is part of the
Yep.
large bowel. The majority of the large bowel has been taken away, and then it's been brought out through an opening on the skin. So you then have two bags, your urostomy bag and your colostomy bag attached, and that's how you pass your urine and pass your feces, your stool.
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
So much to, like, never mind recovery. Whenever you're
Yep.
waking up from surgery and you've now got two bags
Yep.
and you're being put into chemical menopause.
Yeah.
How did it feel, Laura, waking up? I mean, you probably were grateful to open your eyes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was remarkably alert when I woke up, which I think had its blessings and its curses. Because actually in the recovery area, I was fully aware. I was awake. I actually came to before they even brought me into the recovery room. I think due to the circumstances and the enormity of the operation. First of all, my consultants had phoned my husband halfway through to let him know how it's going, because it was a 12-hour surgery, and then he was allowed into the recovery area. So yeah, just relief initially. But then I was told that once a day went past, it was like, you need to be able to manage the stomas and you need to be able to walk upstairs to get home. So from that moment on, that was my goal. There was lots of other things in between. I didn't realize that even sitting up in bed, moving a pillow, I couldn't do. I needed somebody to move me and all these other things. But once I was on top of that, within 2 days, I was actually changing both my stomas independently. And it was a weekend and there was no stoma nurses, so I kind of had to go on with it, but I did. So I think because I threw myself into that so quickly, I kind of accepted them. Whereas I think if people get help for a bit longer, possibly needed and obviously for physical reasons needed, but then it can, you've got more time to think about it. So I kind of got on about it. I would also say it had a slight advantage because prior to my surgery, because of there was a blockage, they wanted to put stents in my kidneys, but they couldn't. So I had 2 nephrostomy bags. So the concept of a bag in a small shape and form was there. So that probably helped a little. So yeah, that was just my goal. I worked towards getting home because I knew that's when the real recovery would begin.
Okay. Wow. That's off to you. I honestly, I don't know how I would cope. I really don't. Because this is, you go from your body looks totally normal to all of a sudden having one stoma, but you have two stomas and everything else is going on. Did you, I know you had the nephrostomy bag, but was it weird having two stomas, or did you just, was acceptance there because you were alive? And
Yeah, I think a bit of both. So the first was only for like about a 6 week period. So basically from 4 weeks post operations and 2 weeks after to make sure the ostomy is working. So I don't think it was a lot of time to accept them specifically, and I was so ill. So that was just a sort of side thing that was getting me to where I needed to be. I think initially because what you say, I just threw myself into go on with it. I think then when it got to like 3 and 4 months, and then I started having some issues and leaks and other problems, and then I kind of like was why me and how am I in this position, and then thinking about how was I going to get on a plane and then everything like that, not in a practical way, but actually if I'm having leaking bags, what am I going to do? My urostomy is very retracted and has been since the start, so I had a whole lot of issues with that. I actually was more worried about the colostomy because I don't have children and I've never really changed. I think I changed my niece's nappy once. So I was this whole like thing that maybe a parent with nappies would think. I was like, oh, colostomy. But it's actually fine. I use nothing basically with it, just the bag, etc. My urostomy is really retracted, and there is an option of having surgery to get it refashioned. But after the surgery I went through, to this day, I can't bring myself to do it because there's also no guarantees it would improve the situation. So I think the leaks had quite a draining emotional effect on me because it becomes it all more real. If it's working, it's fine. But if you're having to get wet and change your bed, change your clothes, that was quite tough. I didn't want to use a night bag when I got home because that was the one thing. So you connect a urology bag to a night bag to let you have more capacity at night. And that was the one thing I said, I don't want that. That's what people in hospital have. And then 3 months in, my husband away to a work trip, and I thought, he's normally nudging me, get me to wake up. He's not here anymore. I'm beginning to sleep better, so I could sleep through, and I started using the night bag. I still didn't like it, but I could see why it was beneficial. And now I've got to that, but just little things like that, because out of all it had gone through and all it had gone on, that just association to me was that bag at the end of the bed where somebody's pee was being collected. So it's just little things sometimes, that you miss, and just you just think, what were the odds? And the odds for me were so low of actually getting this rare form of brain cancer at the age I was and as a female. And I think that sometimes still to this day, occasionally if I have a bad day, you think, why,
40 is so young to be getting bladder cancer. What was the statistics you told me there before?
Yeah, so basically, the average person to get a bladder cancer is a 72-year-old male, still to this day, even 7.5 years on from my surgery. And out of that, I had squamous cell carcinoma, which is only 5% of bladder cancer patients. So, the odds of me getting that were very, very low. And I think in the year that I was diagnosed, there was actually 5 cases in the UK. I got the stats about 4 years later that had in exactly that scenario, that type of bladder cancer in my age group. So my surgery was 2 weeks after my 41st birthday, diagnosed at 40.
Wow, absolutely wow. How is life now? I mean, once you got past recovery, how long did it take you to recover?
Yeah, I mean, I went back, I was fortunate, quite a senior position, and I've since been promoted at work, but I was home based. So I did go back to work after 3 months, full time, 2.5 months part time. in reflection, to be quite honest, and I've told everybody else, emotionally, I don't think I was ready for that, because the days when I worked in the IT industry and when somebody said something was broken, I'm like, well, who cares? What's that in the scheme of things? I don't mean I said that, but in my head, I was like, how's that important? And things annoyed me because I'm like, if you knew what I'm going through, and you can't be like that. So I think that was probably in one way the wrong thing. In the other way, it was good because it gave me a normality back and a focus, and I was true to myself. I could still do something that I wanted to be able to continue doing. As I say, as the months went on, and I think at the 6 months mark, I began to feel still going through physical recovery, but in a position to go places, go weekends away, do things. But then it would just hit me, with especially with the leaks, and just then I was starting to process clearly what I'd been through, how ill I was, how close I was to not being here. And I think that became a very tough period between 6 and 12 months, because it was when you had to work a bit to get more progress physically, because the progress had slowed down. But at the same time, you're processing a lot emotionally, and that was quite a very troubled, sort of hard and difficult period, I would say. But now I'm 7.5 years on. I live a good life, live at home with my husband. We love traveling long haul for holidays. I still travel for work, less than before the pandemic, but I still do. I love cooking, which I still do, and I'm fortunate with my particular colostomy. I'm still able to eat pretty much everything I was able to eat before. So the things that are important to me, I can still do. I still have to remind myself sometimes that, what I have been through, just because I get annoyed that I'm tired, and I'm like, my husband's like, anybody may be tired doing what you did in the last week, but you sometimes think, right, you need to do it. So I try to then have a quieter day, or take a day out at the weekend and not make plans, So I try to be realistic that, sometimes my body needs to rest a wee bit more.
And then from a cancer point of view, obviously you had the full pelvic disintegration. You said they wouldn't have done that. They just don't do it to anybody unless it's kind of contained, and they can, it's going to cure you rather than treat you. As a result of them doing that, how have you been from a cancer point of view? Regular tests?
Yeah, so for the first sort of 6 months, I had a scan every 3 months, a CT scan with contrast. That's the only scanning method that was used. It went to then half yearly, and after 2 years, it went to annually. When it finished after 5 years, I just landed in Budapest for a work trip, and I put my phone on, I got the results to say the 5th scan had also been all clear. And that was the end of it. So that did worry me a little bit, because I felt that sort of security blanket, that check that everything that hadn't come back was still there. I researched a lot of things, and I knew medically that because of the nature of the surgery and the fact it is done to cure, I was in a good place, but you still have a bit of angst. So thankfully now, 7.5 years on, I get regular bloods taken, but no other scanning, and I touch wood, as of now, I am still cancer free, which is quite remarkable.
Yeah, we'll keep manifesting that for you.
Yeah.
That it stays that way. From a menopause point of view, do they put you on HRT? What do they do long term?
Yeah, unfortunately not. Now, there's a lot of discussion about this, but for the particular type of cancer I had, HRT isn't an option, because it is actually a higher risk, given the cancer I had. So
Froze there for a wee second.
with other consultants, although I never actually saw a gynecologist, that it wasn't recommended. So I took that decision not to go ahead with that. I suffer as much as other people maybe the menopause. I think the first part I don't know, because I was going through the surgery recovery. I definitely had issues with like night sweats and things like that. And I did go through a time when I was, making very irrational decisions, and emotionally I was not coping with things that were routine day to day, and smallest things annoyed me, which is probably all the sort of normal symptoms. But again, there wasn't really much support. It was more me finding out. I knew factually, basically it was a sentence: you'll go through the surgical menopause, and that was the end of what you were told. So it was more about getting help yourself. So I had no medical support and no HRT for that.
And what about from like a counselling point of view of, going through this diagnosis at 40 and life-changing surgery, like very life-changing surgery?
Yeah, I wasn't offered any formal counselling, and I didn't seek any out, and probably retrospectively would have been a good idea. And I know certainly a lot of people I support myself now that I meet through social media, then a lot of people are doing that. I think probably unfairly as well, I put a lot of pressure on my husband. He's a very, very strong person. So I think unfortunately it was my husband and my counsellor. And yeah, we got through it, but yeah, it was a difficult time for a lot of other people close to me, and he was supporting them and me. So yeah, I think if anybody was in this position, I would definitely recommend counselling based on the experience of others, but I didn't actually have any formal counselling myself.
There is, the more people that I talk to, there's such a need for it there. And I was actually speaking to someone recently who said from even the time that they would recommend you get it, it's 3 years until you're allocated a counsellor as such.
Right.
It's an absolute shame and disgrace.
Yeah.
But it is the world we live in, sadly.
It is, yeah.
So why did you take them to social media?
Well, yeah, that was interesting because I was on social media a bit beforehand. I would never said I was some guru, but I had a Facebook page and stuff. I didn't even think to look up social media for my operation. I think, to be honest, I wasn't probably healthy enough to do so, and it just wasn't, in my regime. I then was listening to the former chair of Fight Bladder Cancer. It was on a radio station I just came across, and they were talking about bladder cancer and stuff like that. And then I Googled, because I was suddenly like, does anybody else get 2 bags? And I met through online, there was a girl that lives down in Wales, and I was like, oh, found her page. And I think it was really after about the 3 months mark, I was starting to think I hadn't really told a lot of people what had gone on. So I did, I raised money for Colostomy UK because I decided I wanted to do something to try and raise money. And by doing that, I then put the link in my page and things like that. And then I thought, I sort of told a brief bit of my story when I was doing the fundraising. And I thought, I need to tell more people about this because there must be other people, different forms of cancer, different reasons for stomas, not cancer, other reasons. And, a lot of people don't want to speak out. So for 2 reasons, I think for females of my age, and also, to be honest, because bladder cancer is a big male topic as well, a lot of people are males by nature are not always as open to speak about things. So I thought I'll just share my story. I found it quite therapeutic, and then I got in touch with a lot of other people, and it's expanded. I've done a few different things with charities, some of the stoma companies, and really for me, now it's what can I do to help somebody else that is in a similar position, so that's really where it came. But it was quite strange because before 3 months I didn't even look online to understand about stomas or even cancer or anything. And I worked in a job where you used web-based stuff for everything, but I just didn't. But at the time it felt right to do it, and yeah, I feel quite proud of the people I've helped and support, and I think I've raised awareness, and especially as women getting bladder cancer at a young age, and that's something that's Fight Bladder Cancer looking at to change in terms of the pathways for women in this position.
Yeah. What are the pathways similar to bowel cancer? Is it a testing after you?
Yeah, the main problem is that at the age that I am or was, so basically anybody that's under 50, and especially people, females, it wasn't even a consideration that if you get repeated infections, there was no pathway that got to a point where they said, let's see, test further to rule in or out bladder cancer. It just wasn't in the picture because the age bracket didn't fit. So they are actually looking at that. So there was no pathway at the time that would have led me to that. Possibly once I started having the symptoms of the feces, it may have gone colorectal, and something else might have eventually come around. And to be honest, even initially, the consultants I was sent to see were colorectal surgeons. Until the point, then obviously a urologist was involved as well. So at very early stages, they weren't even sure where the cancer had originated.
And was there any idea of how long you'd had it for? Because you're saying for years you'd had UTIs.
No, because the cancer as well, it's really bizarre. It's only that type of cancer that caused by 2 things: repeated urinary tract infections, which obviously in this case must have been the reason for me, or a parasite that lives in water in a very small number of countries. So I kept getting asked if I'd been to these countries, and it was a bit weird. No, they didn't give me any indication, but it is a very fast growing and invasive cancer. So I think it would have been a matter of months as opposed to years. If it was to correlate to when I started losing weight, I would say that it probably maybe started like 6 to 8 months before I got to the position I was in. But that's all retrospective because I didn't have any other symptoms, until I got to that severe, what seemed to be a UTI.
Yeah. Wow. Laura, if there was any information at all, I know you've shared so much there, but if there was one little golden nugget that you could share with someone else who's on a similar journey to yourself, what would it be?
I think it would be to use, recognize sites to reach out potentially to speak to somebody. Because I know that I've spoken to a few people and really they wouldn't have gone ahead with the surgery if they had not seen how you could have a life afterwards. So, don't just assume that your life is over, but also be very aware it's your decisions to make. So if you don't feel you're getting enough options, get a second opinion, or ask your consultant, is this the only option or is this one of three and this is what you're recommended? Because I think a lot of feedback I get from people, it's like they're told this is what you should do. Well, I did have a couple of choices. They weren't great ones, but I had the choice to go ahead with the surgery in the hope that it would have minimal side effects and it would save my life, or not go ahead and take some palliative care. But people have to be aware, and in many other cases, there's more options. I mean, if bladder cancer is at an earlier stage, there's other options for treatment, so some people choose between having the bladder removed or not, and you have to make that. So I think people have to be aware that it's, a constantly changing picture. So basically reach out, speak to somebody that's been in the position that you trust, and also try and make sure you're aware of all the options and you're making the right choice for you.
And I love that you're leading a totally normal life. You're doing all of the things that you love to do before getting unwell. Long haul travel, your concerts, your cooking, you're still working full time is absolutely incredible. It's proof that there is life on the other side of this surgery. Getting diagnosed early on is key, and
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. So, Laura, we wish you all the best with your health and your
Thank you very
double
much.
bag in it. I will post your social media handles below here in the show notes. It's 2bags for life on Facebook and Instagram, so people can go over and give you a follow. And if there's any questions that we haven't covered today, anything that you want to ask, I'm sure you can drop Laura a message and she will get back to you. If not, ping myself a message, and we will try and get you some answers. And remember that we are not professionals, we're just sharing our own experiences here. Do go and seek medical and professional help if you need it, guys. Laura, it's been great to hear from you today. Thank you so much for giving up time this afternoon. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed speaking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep sharing your story on social media. You're already impacting so many people, and keep raising awareness. It is absolutely unbelievable. And you're a legend. So thank you.
Thanks very much.
Guys, that's it from us today. It's over and out from Laura and myself. Do come back next week to join us for another episode. But until then, it's goodbye.